Hi, my name is Carly Sizemore. The book that I chose to read is called Good Kings, Bad Kings. It is by Susan Nussbaum. I currently attend Grayson College. The vulnerable group that was identified in this book were teenagers and young adults. They were living in a facility for juveniles with physical and mental disabilities. Some of the health disparities that I identified while reading the book were the main one being physical dependency. A lot of the kids were wheelchair bound, totally reliant on others, some to even get up and get around. Some were denied wheelchairs, even that would move on their own. So they could just sit them there and they would sit there and wait. Poverty was a common denominator in these children as well. Their parents didn't have insurance or low socioeconomic status. They were actually recruited, some of them from homeless shelters. The abuse that went on in this book was very horrible. There was physical, mental, and sexual abuse, most of which was all unreported. There were some kids there that had mental health issues such as schizophrenia, autism, and ADHD. Knowledge deficit was also a huge disparity. A lot of these kids were not in school. Some of them were allowed to go to school, but it was for a special school, and they did not get the proper education. The last disparity would be discrimination. We all know that there's discrimination against people with disabilities, both mental and physical handicaps. I work in the emergency room. I'm the charge nurse. Some ways that I would practice application for change, which we need to do this with all of our patients. We need to be a patient advocate. We need to be an example of how to treat people, enforce zero tolerance for discrimination, educate our peers on discrimination and signs of reporting abuse and neglect. We also have to work with a full team, an interdisciplinary team, with caseworkers and providers, all of which we need to get on the team to help these kids. Some health promotion ideas I had were, while we have these patients, we need to educate them on how they can report their own abuse and neglect. Also teach them, help them learn how to perform their activities of daily living, such as, showering, bathing, brushing their teeth, getting dressed, use whatever they can do as a strength. We also need to educate the population of their rights, their physical and financial rights, and perform appropriate health screenings. A lot of the kids in this book got very sick and died. So someone's got to be looking out for them and advocating. With our new nurses, some days I still consider myself a baby nurse. We need to educate them on the increased risk of abuse within this vulnerable population, individuals with these mental and physical handicaps. We also need to help them to understand the proper channels when they need to report abuse and neglect. With our seasoned nurses, we need to ignite a desire for change. We need to be an example of not only patient advocates, but as someone that is willing to do the work to make a difference. We need to increase knowledge of everyone on how to identify these vulnerable populations. And we need to educate everyone that is going to be looked to for direction when this type of issue comes up. In this book, there were a few things that I was not expecting. There was a conspiracy that one of the institution doctors also worked for a hospital. A lot of the residents of the institution were sent there when they were sick, and a lot of them would never come back. So could there have been some possible kickbacks for that hospital and that doctor? It doesn't make sense that children were taken to this small hospital instead of a more well-equipped hospital to treat their age. The main thing that really upset me reading this book and surprised me was that there was such a huge number of people that were working at this facility that saw abuse happening and did nothing. They said nothing. They just remained silent, which allowed the abuse and neglect to continue. Now that it's over, there's a few things that stayed with me after reading this book. This vulnerable population, these kids, these young adults, all they really wanted was to be independent. They wanted to feel secure and valued and be able to take care of themselves as much as they could. Their main goal was to leave this institution and function in the world. I felt a number of things while reading this book. I was disgusted, mostly at the ability of the staff to keep their mouth shut when witnessing these horrible actions that were happening to these kids. Disbelief that this place wasn't shut down by someone. I mean, there had to have been some kind of inspectors. They had to have at least seen the little timeout room they would put these kids in. Anger. There were staff that were physically abusing these people. They were not watching them. They were not caring for them. One little girl was even raped in bed while she was trying to go to sleep by one of the staff members. In sadness, it is very, very sad to know that this type of thing is going on in the world, and it is going on. These things are really happening out there. This book, spoiler alert, has no ending. There was no conclusion whatsoever. I don't get to know what happened to Yesenia, Jimmy, Louis, Pierre, and Mia. There was an adult with a disability that worked at the facility, and she started dating one of the guys who did not care that she was in a wheelchair, did not even recognize that. One of the staff members named Jimmy formed a close bond with Yesenia, and it made it seem like she might actually have her move into her home. She was trying to establish a place where she could bring her in. Was there ever any justice for those that lost their lives while they were institutionalized here? And one of my favorite characters, Teddy, he died. He was burned in the shower, slipped and fell, hit his head. He was very close with his father, who visited often. And how did Teddy's father respond to his death? All of these are questions that were left unanswered.